And I'm glad you came this morning. Got a good turnout. You know, it was a gamble when I picked February. I thought probably 10 inches of snow on the ground. Y'all would come anyway, right?
Oh, yeah.
All right. I want to thank the Buffalo Gap Historic Village for inviting me. And we do really promote the village. You know, we're located on I-20 at Merkel. And they come in and they say, what else is there to see around here? Wrong question for me, because I start out with this place and tell them how to get here and give them advertising and tell them about the other places. And it won't hurt y'all if I say this is my favorite out of the other museums. Yeah, I probably will. There's probably somebody here from 12th and the Grace and Frontier, Texas. Are there? All right then, I can be honest on that one. I was going to tell a joke. I don't know if I ought to tell a joke or not, but with email now, it's pretty well ruined the jokes. I get one, all of you got it. 2 little boys that want to learn to cuss. How many of you got it? All right, a couple of you. And I've heard 2 versions of this. I got one on the computer, and then I heard a Baptist friend tell it. But I think mine was a little cleaner. The Baptist friend told it in our club meeting this week. 2 little boys, ages 4 and 6, they were walking along. One of them said, I think it's time we learn to cuss. We're going to practice this morning at breakfast. The other one said, okay. The older one said, you do what I do. And Mama came in and she said, what do you boys want for breakfast? And she said, I think I'm going to put out some Cheerios. And the older boy said, well, I'll have some of those damn Cheerios. Mama jerked him up. Y'all know it. You've either had it happen to you or you've used this. Whack, whack, right to his bedroom. The 4-year-old sat there. Mama came back. And what do you think you're going to have this morning? Well, I sure as hell don't want Cheerios. All right, back in 2002, I've been around Merkel 40-something years. And back in 2002, I made a mistake. I started raising the question, why has no one ever done a history book on the Merkel area? They grin at me because nobody volunteered, like you just did. Was that volunteering? I thought that was just asking a question. Anyway, I said, all right, I'll do one. We had formed the Merkel Area Historical Society in 2001, and at that time, I'm always making a mistake opening my mouth. Don't agree with that. My wife's back there. She might agree. I said, you know, I think we need to do 2 things as we get going along with this historical society. We need to do a Merkel area history book. We need to put it in a museum. Hey, that's great. You're elected president. See what it gets you when you don't learn to keep your mouth shut? So I got elected president, and my wife and I went to work on this book a few years later, 2002. And this is Merkel area history. Ended up being volume 1. And I thought, you know, I'm not going to go out and write this thing. I just started collecting family histories. I immediately got a letter in the mail from this guy that did the story on the Abilene cops. Was he a former Abilene cop?
Yeah.
Well, he immediately told me this thing will never sell. He's not here, is he?
No, he did.
Did he die?
Yes, he did.
I didn't even know.
He was sick. He was ill.
Okay. Well, he said that thing will never fly. You can't sell a book with family histories in it. I'm going to try. So we started collecting family histories, and we got history after history and picture after picture. We included towns around, events around, Mulberry Canyon between here and Merkel, one of the greatest historical deals in this whole area. Used to be full of buffalo, Comanche Indians, Butterfield stage line ran through there, and then cut across over to Lake Fort Phantom, to the fort over there. The very first, and I didn't know this for years, the very first Goodnight Loving cattle drive went through here. I had no idea. So that canyon out there is full of history. We included it, lots of area things. And this book that would never sell, in 2005, my wife and I had made $18,000 selling these books. We finally found a place for a museum in Merkel. We looked for years. We looked at the old Presbyterian church, the old bank building downtown with the big columns built in 1900, Farmer State Bank. One building after another, the old WTU building. In Roby, they gave their building to the historical group for a museum. In Merkel, no, we weren't getting much help on this deal. Finally, I went up on I-20, found a place, a family that had 3 acres for sale for $11,000 on the interstate. About that time, the former owner of Circle A Western Store in Merkel. Anybody got a name?
Adcock.
Adcock, there you go. Wayman said, Larry, you looked and looked. He was on our board. He said, I'm tired of it, you're tired of it. I'll sell you my Western store. How much? $50,000. 3,000 square feet, metal building built in 1977. I thought, well, not the greatest thing for a museum, metal building. I found that out for sure when I started trying to raise support. I put in with all the foundations in Abilene. I won't name them, you know them. Might hurt somebody's feelings. Y'all don't need a museum. Why? You can come to Abilene's museums. You don't need your own. You can go to Buffalo Gap. Well, my wife might say I'm hard-headed. That's not a kind word to say. I'm just determined, and I was determined we'd have a museum. So we bought that building. My wife and I put $18,000 down on the 50, left 32. And you know how you make mistakes? A few days later, I got a call. Harold Clemmer, San Angelo, Merkel boy. What y'all owe on that building you bought? $32,000. Mind if I write you a check? Harold, why would you ask? How fast can you get here with that check? Well, the reason I asked, I bought a huge building, built a huge building for, I better not name the place, start getting on toes, and I wanted my wife's picture in that, I think it was $300,000 building he built. And some of them didn't want my wife's picture in there. I said, you put anything you want to on this building, as long as it's clean and moral. He said, well, I want this building named after my parents. And that would be, of course, the Clemmers. Zella and Walter Clemmer. And would you, on your advertising, and I've got some advertising, would you put that building is in memory of, and we've got it right here, Mr. and Ms. A.W. Walter Clemmer. That goes on all our advertising. The very first building, the one right here on the end, was in memory of them. And y'all see what an optimist I was on the crowd today. But we always get the quality. And I know we got the quality here today. I'll pass these around, y'all can get one. And as I start passing in a minute, if I can get maybe my wife or somebody in the back or somebody wants to help. I've got some friends here today. Glad the friends came. There's Richard Valdez. I'm going to talk about him in a minute. He may be sorry he came. No, he'd rather be here and hear it than hear later what I said about him.
What do you need me to do right now?
All right, Richard. Anyway, we did this book. We built the museum 6 months, or we got the museum going. 6 months later, that building was full, 3,000 square feet. Merkel people kept bringing stuff. They kept calling me to come get it. We got it. 6 months we're full. I thought, this isn't gonna work, we're full. I put out the word, we're building 5,000 more square feet on it. And by the way, it belongs to the Merkel Historical Society. We put a lot of time and money in it ourselves, but it's Merkel Historical Society. Harold Plummer calls, Larry, what's it gonna cost you to build that building? I said, Harold, I'm building it cheap, $50,000. Now, I say cheap, 2 restrooms, a kitchen, heat and air, big meeting room, 50,000, 5,000 square feet. This was 2006, that was cheap. And if you come in, you can tell the building's cheap. We had to build it cheap. Harold said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you half of it. Thank you, Harold. I said, we're gonna have a groundbreaking. Already? Yeah, we're gonna have a groundbreaking. I work by faith, not by sight. Okay. He came to the groundbreaking. Our board of directors were out there. We started the groundbreaking. Harold came up to me, who's paying the other half? I don't know, but I'm building a building. All right, Larry, I'll write you out a check for $50,000. Thank you, Harold. And by the way, this building is named after you. Oh, Larry, don't need to do that. People say. His niece came in a couple of months later. Where's that Harold Plummer exhibit hall y'all are building? Oh, it's right out here, out back, what used to be the parking lot on the west side. You don't know what it meant to him if you'd have named that building after him. That's what I thought. We filled it in a year. I got ready to build another one, 5,000 square feet, keep on going. I kept waiting for the phone to ring. Phone didn't ring. I saw Harold one day. Larry, you might have been wondering about me helping you pay for that last building. I'm through. I thought, you got families with money in Merkel, one of them can help you. Well, Harold, I appreciate what you've done, because in the meantime, we bought the whole city block behind the museum. Had a bunch of old trailer houses out there, a dump ground. We bought it, we cleaned it up, we fenced it, we put in sheep and goats. Here comes the city of Merkel. Dumb little code enforcement officer. Gill, you've got to get rid of those sheep out there. I said, dummy, they're goats. Well, I don't care what they are, get rid of them. Who says? City manager. We made the mistake of hiring a city manager from Clyde. I hope he's not one of your cousins or something. He and I butted heads. I went up there and I said, what do you mean telling me to get rid of my lawnmowers? That's what they were, lawnmowers. I don't care about sheep and goats. You're getting rid of them. I passed a city ordinance where you couldn't have them. I said, put me on the agenda for the next city council meeting. He did. I met with him, and sometimes I don't control myself. Y'all hired this dummy from Clyde. He says for me to get rid of our lawnmowers. Y'all gonna come down there and help me maintain that acre and a half behind the museum? No. You gonna change it where I can put in some longhorn cattle? Texas longhorn cattle. Registered, historical Texas longhorn cattle. They changed the ordinance for the museum. I can put anything I want down there. So now we've got, at the current time, 3 longhorn cows and a longhorn bull down there. I wasn't happy. We're getting lots of people off the interstate. We're long Texas longhorn. Oh, they're out back. You're welcome to go out, but I had to make a change. Pat's brother's here today from San Angelo, Francis Brashear. And he came up visiting one day, brought his granddaughter Erica, her 2 little sons. We went out back. One of the cows had a new longhorn calf. I didn't do enough instructing before we walked out there. Erica walks over and pets that new baby calf. Mama comes over, and from where I was standing, it looked like the horn went in right here. Actually, the horn went in right through this belt loop. The cow threw her in the air, literally. I went over to make sure she was all right. I told Mama to get away from her. I asked Erica, please don't pet the baby anymore. Oh, I knew better than that. I said, yeah, you did. But anyway, it's over. I don't take people back there to connect with the Longhorns anymore. Even though they're gentle, they eat out of my hand. One of them, I can climb up on her back and ride her. We don't do that anymore. But it was so funny. She's got a little son who went to school the next week. And the teacher seemed to think the boy liked to make up stories. He said, let me tell you about my mama, a longhorn cow here with a horn, threw her up in the air. And the teacher called Erica. Your boy's making up stories again, big stories. Erica said that wasn't a big story, that was the truth. And by the way, our little son loves the museum. He brought me a little World War II airplane one day. Can I put this in the museum? Sure, we'll put it in there with your name on it. This boy is smart. The next time he came, I didn't tell him where I put the plane. He comes in the museum, I'm gonna find my plane, and I started to say, I didn't get to say where it was. He went straight to the military, looked at the display there, there's my plane. How old was he? 6?
Probably.
Young guy at the time, and that's a 13,000 square foot museum now. Went straight to where it was, there's my plane. He put 2 and 2 together and thought a military plane would be displayed in the military. All right, enough about that. We got in trouble because we didn't include everybody in the 2002 book. We were asked to write another one, to do another one. 2005, we put out the next one. My wife said, I'm not helping. All right. Hard head, I'll do it myself. Then all she saw for about the next month was my back sitting at the computer, working on this one. She got tired of that. She walks over, can I help? Yeah, I didn't go twice as fast. So I didn't ask for help like I did on the first one because we ran into some problems. We ran into people that make big mistakes. Like the man that walked up to me one day and laughed, said, Larry, you know what you got me in the book? I said, no, what I got you doing, Junior? You got me getting married the day after I was born. Junior, oh no. So, we've had trouble selling volume 2. We didn't make thousands of dollars like we did on volume 1. Because everybody said you just took the first book and added to it. Wrong. We corrected the mistakes, put the corrections in here, and did a whole new book. And it covers the whole area. Let me get that out of the way. Now, I just want to kind of start in a question. You can see I brought a few things. I didn't want y'all bored just listening to me. Let me tell you one of my favorite stories. I am going to pass these around. In fact, let's get it going because it'll take a while to pass all this stuff around. Tumbleweed Smith came to the museum one day. Larry, can I look around? Sure, Tumbleweed. Went through, showed him things, started out the back door. He said, I've got a good story. All this stuff you've shown me. And I said, let me tell you another story. Look at that picture. He looked at it and he said, tell me about it. I told him about it. He said, that's a story all its own. I'm going to do 2 radio programs on you. So that was a story all its own. Came on the stations that carried Tumbleweed Smith. By the way, the closest that I know of is the station in Sweetwater. KXOX?
Yes.
Okay. Tumbleweed did 2 stories on the Merkel Museum and on that. 1925. Sheriff from Big Spring came to Merkel. We've had a man killed in Big Spring. He said he's out here, I hear, working on a farm south of Merkel. He started hunting a deputy sheriff to go with him. He couldn't find one. And I find that ironic because that deputy sheriff's granddaughter is one of our hardest workers in the museum. If he had gone out with that sheriff that day, my good friend June wouldn't be here because the lawman didn't come back. They walked out toward this man. He was grubbing tree stumps. As they walked toward him, he reached down, picked up a .30-30 rifle, shot the constable in the stomach. He took the Merkel constable with him. I'm glad I wasn't it in 1925. And by the way, I don't normally wear a gun. I normally don't wear one when I'm working, but I've learned people aren't what they used to be, and now I wear a gun. Especially after the constable in College Station got killed last year. He was doing what I do, putting people out of their houses. People don't like to be put out of their houses, even though they didn't pay for it, didn't pay the rent. So I've had papers to serve on the way down here this morning, so that's why I'm wearing my gun. I didn't get them all, I'll get them on the way back. Y'all, I've been slowed down the last few days for some reason in my job. But anyway, I'm gonna catch up today, 60s, sunshine. Constable crawled over against a tree and laid there with a stomach wound. The sheriff zigzagged, his car was in the line of fire. He didn't hear a gunshot. He went over to the neighbors, the Ritchie place. I need your car now. They told the sheriff, take the car. They didn't know him, but they saw the badge. He drove out of the driveway, started down the road, and got shot 3 times in the back. Into him. Then, this man who, his grandson's a good friend of mine, this killer, described his granddad as what he's been told was a gentle man, walked over, pulled the constable's weapon out of his belt, and shot him in the head. Then he took off, went back to Merkel, told his family goodbye, took off on the run with a relative, and word got around, there was a posse out. This wasn't just lawmen. Everybody that owned a gun was out looking for these guys, especially the killer. They found him hiding in a boxcar lawn, and the deputy Abilene police chief walked up to the boxcar and said, "You're gonna need to surrender." He opened the door and shot him. The bullet just grazed his leg, but he's killed a man plus 2 cops, and now he tried to kill the Abilene deputy police chief. They backed off. One of the men had bought dynamite. Back in 25, you could buy dynamite down at the hardware store. Man, wasn't that different? They lobbed dynamite under that railroad car, and that man came out of there. And they filled him with holes. Tied him to the Abilene police chief's car. And as you see, that's the old Model A there in that picture. And if you notice, he's holding a gun in his hand like this. He's dead and tied to the car, but you notice the gun. That was the constable's gun that he took, shot him in the head, and ran off with it. They drove all over Taylor County. You got the message. You don't kill cops in Taylor County. And that story has been told over and over. And that's one of the favorite pictures that people look at in the museum. 1937, Abilene City Marshal went to a bar there in town. Music was loud, turn it down. The man said, "I'll turn it down." Marshal drove off, turned it back up. Here comes the marshal again. He tries to go in the door, can't get it open, shoves his shoulder against it, tries to go in, and the man standing there shot him in the eye with a .45. Now they kill people for that. They put them to death. Kid pointed a rifle at me one day out here in nowhere land, out in Coronada's camp area. There's some mean people in those hills. Any of y'all here? Kid, I walked up there where I could see, and the kid had a rifle aimed at my chest. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm trying to decide whether to kill you or not." I said, "Let me paint you a picture. In your mind, picture laying on a gurney with needles going in your arm and jerking." He said, "I'm 16 years old." I said, "For killing a cop in Taylor County, you will be found guilty, tried as an adult and found guilty, and you will find yourself laying on that gurney jerking. You'll live about 8 minutes. I don't know how much of it you'll know, but you'll die." He lowered the rifle. "I guess I won't kill you today." I said, "Thank you." Got back to the office, my buddy said, "You arrested him, didn't you?" I said, "I'm still shaking. You think I arrested him? I'm glad to be alive." I do take backup though now when I go into Coronadus Camp Hill. 1954, Abilene police officer Jimmy Spann. He and his partner were out on patrol. They stopped to eat. They got a call. A man has kidnapped a family. He's headed west. At that time, which would have been old Highway 80. Spann and his partner caught up with this couple. They had stopped at the Cosden gas station downtown Merkel. They pulled in behind them, and as they got out of their cars, the man dropped to the ground from the driver's seat firing. He shot Spann 6 times. Spann and his partner both were firing at him. I think they put 6 or 7 bullets in the kidnapper. Spann died a few minutes later at Sadler Hospital. The killer lived. That's life. A few years ago, I went to the Texas Peace Officer Memorial in Austin. I went through there looking. 4 officers I knew were killed in Merkel. Spann was the only one on the Texas Peace Officer Memorial. I started sending the paperwork. I had to send newspaper clippings, proof that I had, and got the other 3 officers on the memorial. About a year later, I got a nicest thank you note from a couple of those families who thanked me for getting their loved ones on the memorial. Moving right along, I was told that I'm going to tell the story of Merkel fireman. Loretta Fulton called. She told me she's going to make it. Don't believe she made it today. Did an excellent job on that article in the paper. And this was 1967 in Merkel. You see here that the interstate has a great big hole blown in it. Fire department got a call that morning. There's a trailer burning with dynamite on it out by the truck stop on the interstate. The man who answered the phone, full-time man, rode out there. Fire Chief Wayman Adcock got in his station wagon, right here, rolled out there, and pulled right up next to the, I'll pick all that up in a minute, I do that at home. I pick it up too, don't I? Adcock pulled up there, just as he pulled up there, the dynamite went off. Blew the windshield out of his station wagon into his face. That man now 95 years old. He said it took him years to pick all that glass out of his face, especially his eyes. People didn't want to be a fire chief in Merkel. Within 1 year, Loretta asked me how long, within 1 year, 3 chiefs died. One of them was Jimmy Toombs, and I've got his cap here. I want to bring a lot of stuff from the museum today, but I just brought what I could carry. I couldn't carry it all. Hundreds of thousands of dollars of items. Jimmy Toombs' cap. 3 chiefs died within a year. One died, I believe, July 37, car wreck near Merkel. The next one, Wozencraft got thrown off the fire truck as it turned over on the way to a fire at the cotton gin. Killed him. The third one, Carlton Dick, and these men have relatives around here. I'll get some of them here. All right, I can tell the stories like I want to. Carlton got killed in a wreck. I think he'd been to a wrestling match and was killed on the way back to Merkel. So they wondered if anybody wanted to be Merkel fire chief. Wayman Adcock steps into the picture, and he's Merkel fire chief for the next 50 years. I don't normally throw my guns around like that. Y'all call that a gun? Marlboro, cowboy drowns at the race. This happened up near Old Glory. We've got this Marlboro man. Everybody remembers old Marlboro man? There were several. We had one from my hometown, Miami, Texas. There have been a lot, but people are always walking in the museum, and one day one of them said, "Look at that Marlboro man." I said, "Yes, sir, you want me to tell you the story?" He said, "No, I'll tell you the story. I work on that ranch." Great! So I got to hear the story again, make sure I was telling it right. But he rode his horse out in a stock tank to break it. Horse took them both under the water, they both drowned. So, not the way to break a horse anymore. John Warren Higgins, born 1901, Salt Branch, north of Merkel. I've got an airplane propeller in the museum off his airplane. He built two. I believe 1932, he built an airplane right there on South First by the railroad in Merkel. People were laughing at him. You think you built an airplane? He built the airplane, got it flying, flew it over Merkel, and threw toilet paper on people that laughed at him. Don't mess with the Higgins. 35. He had a problem with that 32 model airplane. He put a Ford engine in it. Now don't knock Ford, I'm a Ford man. But Fords were not meant to drive like this when he was flying. So when he banked that airplane, the engine would die. 35, he built another one, put an airplane motor in it. And flew that. He'd give you a ride in that airplane for $1. 1935, a lot of people didn't have $1. But not only do we still have that in the museum, we've got the Higgins shop in there now. The city stayed after him, it wasn't up to code. Finally they said, "Here, y'all can have that thing at the museum. We'll give you the whole shop with 3 lots. By the way, 3 lots are for sale. We moved a lot of that to the museum, put in a Higgins shop, including the old branding wall. The blacksmith would make a brand the wall. We've got the wall in the museum. Now we're trying to find out who all those brands belong to. I meant to wear my watch today, and I thought, well, surely with a speaker they'll have a clock.
11:30.
11:30, thank you. I'll keep on going then. I just brought different things to talk about what's in the museum. Anybody know Beelan Sedbury in Abilene? All right. Beelan was in World War II. He captured some German soldiers one day. He had them all put their hands behind their back, behind their neck like this. And my hands are small, but Beelan walked behind the soldiers and looked at them. This soldier, I'm sure, had bigger hands than I do, but he could tell there was something wrong. He slapped that soldier's hands, and this .25 Walther fell out. When it hit the rock, it busted the handle on both sides. I'll pass that around and let y'all look at it. I don't normally do that, but this is a trusting, honest crowd. I can tell by looking at you. And y'all are interested in history. I'll pass the bullet around too. And this would kill you, .25 caliber, it'll kill you, no doubt. Good thing Beelan saw that, or he wouldn't have lived up into, what is Beelan now, in his 80s?
Yes, I made
He wouldn't be here in his 80s if he hadn't seen that gun, and he took these bullets. That's 25. So we've got lots of stories like that in the museum. Here's another, we've got a nice military exhibit. Anybody know what the Nazis did with this knife? It says, "Irre und Blut." Somebody want to translate?
Say it again.
Irre und Blut.
By blood.
Blood. Blood and Italy. Honor. The Nazis gave these to children whose parents did not support the Nazis. Told them, you take this home and kill your parents with it. We've got some pretty impressive stuff in the museum, and we tell the stories. So I'll pass that around. I'll leave it in here if you don't want to take a chance on cutting it. So.
Who gave that to you?
A man at Trent, Orville Patterson. Orville is a collector of military artifacts. He was wounded in Vietnam. In fact, we've got a Jeep in the museum from Vietnam. But Orville didn't give me much Vietnam stuff. We got all kinds of World War I, World War II. We don't have much Vietnam. Why? A lot of those men are not proud of Vietnam because they were given such a welcome home, right?
And they couldn't win it.
They couldn't win it.
Couldn't win it.
They weren't permitted to win it.
That's it. They weren't given, we could have blown Vietnam off the map. Our presidents wouldn't back them. And so, that's the war we lost, if you want to call it a war. Some presidents didn't even call it a war. It was an action like Korea. But we could have won Vietnam, we didn't, but our soldiers were treated horribly. Not only that, but I've got lots of friends that came back from Vietnam, some that didn't. And we sprayed them with Agent Orange, our own men. We weren't discriminating about spraying, we sprayed them all. And they'll never get over it. A lot of them have died, as I said. I've got diabetes. I've hated it all my life. That's the only good thing diabetes did for me. Uncle Sam called my number. He didn't want me. He said, you're an F4 with that diabetes. I'd have gone to Nam. I mean, I had a lot of friends over there, but I guess the good Lord looking after me, I didn't have to. This cap. Now, the guns are debatable. Why? Some say only the Union soldiers wore the guns.
It looks like a cavalry. It looks like a Southern Confederate cap.
This is a Confederate cap. We've got a Confederate man standing in the back of our museum holding a Civil War rifle. It is an original rifle from the Civil War. And we like to do hands-on with kids. I mean, kids like to touch things. They like to get in things. So we let them do some of that. We'll put this cap on a kid, hand him that rifle, and when you realize how heavy it is, we'll make him hold it. You can imagine carrying one of those through the dirt, the mud, the heat, and the cold. But we let kids be back there with that rebel soldier. Confederate soldier. We usually tell about the 3 Civil War battles in Texas. Y'all know there were 3 battles in Texas. Let's see, where was that? Amarillo and Abilene? Down on the coast. The Union soldiers tried to come into Texas from the Gulf. Then I've got this hat here. We got lots of these hats. These hats must have been real popular. We've got the Sadler Clinic Hospital that's full of these. Most of them are white porcelain, and we've got a few that are kind of like a little pitcher and a little opening on the top. This one's kind of unusual. I brought it because it had a handle to carry your hat around, if you don't want to wear it. Somebody want to tell me what this really is? Bedpan. Man, they must make bedpans by the thousands. And I think the museum's got about 15. The only more that we've got of bedpans is sewing machines and typewriters. When computers came along, typewriters died. And the museum's full of them. I don't even try to take them anymore. And sewing machines. I don't know what took the place of sewing machines.
Walmart.
Walmart! Let's go buy a new one, don't worry about it. Anybody want to play the bedpan? I remember my great-grandma smoked Prince Albert. And I remember lemon drops and wheat bread with butter on it. Those are three things I always saw when I went to great-grandma's house. And then, I guess she smoked these by the thousands. She had a little dump right out across the driveway where she threw these. It probably had several thousand in it when she died. Y'all know what she got out of smoking these?
Throat and mouth.
She died of throat cancer. That's exactly right. So, but that's a good memory I have.
I'll throw one in, if I may.
Certainly.
My father, Alan King, started smoking when he was 16. And when I come along, got up there big enough to remember, instead of rolling his own with Dukes, he rolled his own with Prince Albert. And his shirts were specked with holes where the cigarette would dribble. As he smoked, it'd dribble on his shirt, burn little holes. Case closed. He got a bigger punch out of that than like Dukes or another cigarette. So he rolled his own out of a pipe tobacco, Prince Albert.
All right. Good story. By the way, I know his brother Hugh comes to the museum pretty often. Put some things in the history books. And I asked him if he could hold a candle to Hugh and talking. I mean, Hugh is like this. His wife said he can. But, you know, I've known him long enough to know.
Now, just a minute, she's from Nebraska, and you would have been, you would say and trust anything she said in Nebraska. She's been down here in Texas 8 years, so you better watch it. She can stretch it.
Okay. All right, other things from the museum, and I wish I could have brought the whole museum. I just brought a few things I could carry. Anybody got any idea what this is? Barney Fife. We've got Barney Fife in the museum. At times in the museum, I got lucky. I contacted Barney Fife a few years ago. Told him about the museum. I said, anything you want to share with me? I got a shirt with his badge on it and some other items. He died a year later. I think cigarettes got him too. But for a while at Barney, we've got a 53 police cars over there. It's our museum parade car. We've got two. And I had Barney, I ordered a mannequin that could bend its legs and had Barney in the police car. But it got to where it's so much trouble when I wanted to drive the police car in parades, I had to pull him out of there and kind of redress him after he fell apart. Mannequins are not fun to work with. But anyway, we now got Barney sitting up on a table. And I thought, well, that's interesting. Just a sample of the kinds of things we've got in the museum. And there's no end to them. I just knocked something else off. I'll pick it up in a minute. I mentioned our longhorn cattle. This is me kissing a longhorn cow. Actually, she's kissing me. And then I go in and wipe the slobber off. And the first time she kissed me, I walked the museum, there was my wife. I tried to get a kiss. Guess what? She ran. She doesn't like longhorn slobber. That was a real hit with the kids, though. I've sold both the cows that will kiss me, I'm kinda sorry we did, because that was a real hit with the kids. But the last time I let Hazel kiss me, she bit my lip. Man, it's not fun anymore. Cal got big teeth. And I always made sure that the piece of cake was a real trick. She didn't really kiss me, it was a trick. I'd put a piece of cow cube that long in my mouth. They'd come over there to get it, and it looked, I'll pass it around, looked just like she was kissing. And the newspaper got a kick out of it. Everybody got a kick out of it but my wife. All right, I talked about the firemen a while ago who were killed. It just so happens, I believe 1929, 1930, they took a picture of the Merkel Fire Department. The 3 chiefs who were killed in 1931 are all in this picture. And that's Woodrow, Carlton, and Jimmy. I'll pass that around. This is just history, which we tried to preserve. And when I was talking to the foundations about some money and they wouldn't give me any, you know, y'all got history that would not be here if somebody hadn't preserved it. And all the time now, we get a lot of history out of Abilene. And a guy walked in one day, would you go over there to that Grace Museum and get my World War I uniform away from them? I said, I can't go do anything except go ask if they want to turn it loose. I walked over there and shocked me, they couldn't wait to get the thing out. We didn't want that thing to start with. Y'all know what a World War I uniform in pristine condition is worth?
A bunch.
A bunch. And I've got 2 of them now. No moth holes. Let's see, World War I. That uniform's, how old is it?
100 years.
It's going to be 100 years approximately. 1914. And of course the war went on to 18, but I mean they had those uniforms going pretty much most of the war. So to think a 100-year-old uniform, and I said, what is the matter with you people? A World War I uniform, pristine condition. We are the urban museum. Y'all are the rural. That didn't hurt my feelings. This old rural boy brought 2 pickups and 2 big trailers, let's load them up. And we did. We cleaned out their closets. Old kerosene incubator. Mary Eula Sears side saddle. Did that name ring a bell to a lot of you?
Oh, yes.
Do y'all have a Mary, she's busy. Y'all have a Mary Eula Sears artwork in this museum?
Sure.
Bunch of
Okay. I felt like you probably did. She was a real well-known Abilene artist, and what happened to her? Murdered. Guy went in her house, sliced her up and put her in a closet where she died. And he got the death penalty, but justice really isn't what it appears to be. What happened to him? Death sentence commuted, life sentence, let him out. He was coming back to Abilene. Abilene had a parade for him, right? What? What did Abilene say?
Better not come over here.
You're not coming back to Taylor County. So he went to Dallas. But anyway, I just threw that in.
Tell a little bit about who she was,
All right,
about her family. I
thank
know a
you.
little, but I don't know enough.
The Sears family, basically from Truby, about 14 miles north of Merkel, and from Union Ridge, about a mile north of Merkel. That was the home ground for the Sears family. Big ranchers, cattlemen, and years later, y'all know how their name is known. Sears in Abilene meant what?
money.
Money, nursing homes. Yeah, very well known. Mary Eula, of course, lived over on Sales Boulevard, and that's where she was murdered. But she was an artist, and family of cowboys, cowgirls.
Who was her father?
Was it Arthur or a brother to Arthur Sears?
I can't-
Arthur Sears, he, on the way to Sweetwater from Trent, that was one of their ranches. Arthur Sears started out at the head of Mulberry Canyon called the Brown Ranch. He bought it, and that's where he started raising his family early 1900s. Now, I don't know if Arthur Sears is a brother, cousin, or what to the.
I'm the same way. I get mixed up with John, Arthur, and a couple of you volunteer to check the inboxes. We'll get the answers.
All of them.
Okay. Anybody else want to look up the series? Okay. And if we'll find out. It's been a while since I've studied Mary Eula, and I went so many directions with this deal today because one thing I learned about the museum, everybody that walks in that door's got something else they want to focus on. And you never know what it's going to be. I've got some stuff that Joe Stevens picked up in the old Merkel dump ground. Little broken guns and cars and bottles. Joe Merkel had a Coca-Cola bottling plant in 1906. Hardly anybody knows it. But the old dump ground's full of those bottles. They threw them away. Merkel Bottling Works, Merkel, Texas. And
She was the daughter of Alex.
ma'am?
She was the daughter of Alex.
Okay, thank you. Y'all see how handy these books are? We had no clue when we did those books how much they do use. You ask a question, you get an answer. Anybody recognize this hat? Abilene Police, who's that? Here's a former officer, Richard Valdez. Richard has stuff in the museum. By the way, I will say this, we've got stuff from everywhere in this area. People from Abilene come out, they say, 12th Armored wouldn't take it, Gray